We can save the dramatic reading we were doing for later because it turns out that's like at the middle of the book, as I forgot completely.
Perfect. Apparently, this is going to be a different movie match, friends. But with that, I will welcome you to Lost Movie Matters with Akeem and friends. Do 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 do.
That's a great jingle.
People say that I'm crazy, but I'm not that laying back. I know what I know, and I'll happily show movie madness is all in the mind. Hey, welcome, Lincoln.
Doing great. Good to be here.
Are you sure?
Absolutely. This is the
Great.
most interesting thing I've done all day.
Well, that's awesome. Your hair is colored, I see. Now?
Yes.
Last time I saw you, I think it was all blonde.
Yeah.
Like 3 days ago. So you're making changes, which is good. And today, down to business. We are here to talk about the movie Monster Call. Right?
Yeah.
And you recommended this movie to me. I have never seen it. I had never heard of it. All right. But apparently it came out in 2016, which matches my 5-year window for a Lost movie. And you want to tell us what it's about?
Okay, yeah. A Monster Calls is about I believe, 13-year-old boy whose mother is dying of some terminal disease, heavily implied to be cancer. And he befriends a talking tree monster played by Liam Neeson, who shares him life lessons in the form of stories.
Is that Liam Neeson?
That is Liam Neeson.
I wasn't sure. You know, Liam Neeson has a great voice in general. I think that's why he was like, I have a special set of skills. And people were like, ooh, does he? Although, you know, we had seen Liam Neeson in all sorts of things. But I wasn't sure he had a special set of skills. But when he said he had a special set,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I feel like if I was the person that originally said that line, like no one would be intimidated. I think they'd think I was flirting with them.
Yeah, I don't believe I say, hey, you have my daughter. I have a special set of skills. People were like, yeah, nah, I don't buy your skills. Liam Neeson, boy, but, yeah. And in this thing, he's great as the narrator, as the tree monster. I mean, the movie happens and the boy, you know, he's struggling. Right?
Yeah.
He's really struggling with his mother. He has an absentee father, and he's trying to deal with it. He believes that she will get better.
Yeah.
The treatment isn't working. Right? The treatments aren't working, and she's getting sicker and sicker. And his grandmother, played by the fantastic Sigourney Weaver.
Yes.
I mean, she has a bad accent because it's British, and Sigourney Weaver apparently can't do accents. You know, she tries to make it light, but it's not great. You know,
Yeah, it was a good choice making it light. It's less distracting that way, but it was noticeable that she just isn't British.
I mean, she's also Sigourney. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
Like, she can't really take that away. Like, she was an alien. She was Ghostbuster. She was in all sorts of things. Like, that's Sigourney. She was also in Alien 2, Alien 3, and Alien 4. They may not be called that, but she's in all of them.
Yes.
I believe she died in Alien 3 and then got cloned in Alien 4.
Yeah, she was cloned with a little bit of xenomorph DNA, and then she had a xenomorph baby.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, really, after Aliens, they should have stopped. Although I like Prometheus. I did like
Prometheus was good. And despite it not being a good movie, I love Alien vs. Predator 2. Never saw the first one.
Oh, I've never seen Alien vs. Predator 2. I've seen Alien vs. Predator. It's a good flick. Like it's not a good flick, but like it's watchable. And like I always say to people, always like, "Oh, you critique movies." I don't critique movies. I just want to talk. I want to enjoy a conversation about movies, and I like movies. But like, as long as you enjoy the movie, it doesn't matter if it hits all the high points of storytelling. Like,
Yeah,
if you enjoyed the movie and the visuals got you, and you escaped a bit of your reality and enjoyed that for 90 minutes, 2 hours, that's all that matters. Really.
yeah.
So, what did you like about this film?
Um, I love the narrative themes of it and how well they're presented. Like they managed to, genuinely effectively communicate all five stages of grief without falling into that kind of obvious chapter setup. You know,
You
like
want to go?
it never.
You want to go through the 5 stages for it?
Yes, it's uh, denial,
Mhm.
anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Yeah, and he goes through all of them. The thing about the stages of grief is that people sometimes think you just go boom, 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 but you go back and forth.
100%, and they communicate that very well in this movie.
Yeah, and it's very difficult, especially as a young adult, to deal with those emotions and deal with understanding that your life is going to change. He doesn't deal with those things very well. Um, like obviously the tree monster. Who the first time you see the tree monster, I'm just like, ooh, what's this? And it's a big tree and it's got this fire flames coming out of him. And the visuals I think are stunning in this thing. So you have this very muted colors, sort of dark film, right?
Yeah,
And the tree monster shows up, and even though he's a monster, it's bright. And then you go into the stories that. So the monster shows up, and he says, "I'm going to tell you 3 stories, and then you're going to tell me your story." What is he talking about? Like what he's a monster?
exactly. Essentially, exactly how Connor is reacting. Like, what are you talking about, man?
Why do you want to tell me stories? Like what is happening? But he does. But and then you go into these animations that are beautiful and are interesting. And they're not sort of cookie cutter, they're artistic. They're
Yeah,
really done. And he tells these stories. Now, these stories are allegories, obviously.
yes,
And they teach him to process his emotions appropriately. And the kid is not processing, he's not dealing with the issue, which a lot of us don't.
no,
I mean, who wants to deal with heavy, hard stuff? No one. But he does learn um, valuable lessons. Tree, but the tree doesn't offer any solution, which I think is important sometimes when we talk about what we deal with in our lives. Sometimes you just want to listen and you want to hear what other people are going through. But your solution for something isn't necessarily my solution,
yeah.
especially,
Um,
especially with emotion.
especially with emotion, and I also think it's kind of great that they like omit any sort of like obvious moral that the tree is giving or even that. Like he is not interested in telling Connor the answers even to what the story means. He just leaves him with the story and goes off to do his tree business.
So he does go off to just go be a tree and cause as much havoc as possible. Now, I will say this: I, I, and I'm not a fan. All right, so like the Gia film, like any sort of mid '80s sitcom lesson. You know what I mean? I,
Yeah,
I don't want to learn lessons from. People. That's not what I'm there for. I'm there just. And I remember watching a interview with Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David, or it might have just been one or the other. And I remember them, whoever it was talking about one of the things that they decided when they were going to make their show is that there would be no lesson. Just none. We're not going to learn any lessons. All right, we're going to do this thing. We're going to enjoy ourselves. But none of our characters are going to learn anything. We're not going to teach you anything. That's not what we're here to do. And I am of the belief. I mean, Larry David is my spirit animal anyway. Like,
Yeah.
not only that, but like it's like what I was telling you the other day about you were telling me about the One Piece, right? And I told you I love the TV show, and you were very enthusiastic about the manga and the fucking the cartoon. I was like, that Larry David named his show Curb the Enthusiasm, literally because he hates when people are super enthusiastic about stuff. It makes him not want to try it. Literally, that's why he named it. So I am a big believer in like you got to curb your enthusiasm about some stuff. And you start telling me about stuff, it's like our friend Craig telling me about the Batman. I still haven't seen the Bat, and I was really excited to see the Batman, but I still haven't seen it because Craig started talking about it. And every time he talks to me, he talks to me about that and the Avatar movie. Although Avatar I won't see because like I spent 3 hours watching Titanic, and I can't get those hours back, so I won't give James Cameron any more of my time. That's just me though. James Cameron gets no more of my time. I sat through that crap show that was Titanic, and I heard that Celine Dion song, but you are too young to remember. My Heart Will Go On, in like 1998, played every 5 minutes for like 6 months. You could not escape. All right? I don't know if you ever heard that song.
No, I've also never seen Titanic or Avatar.
I won't recommend Titanic. I've never seen Avatar, but I wouldn't recommend Titanic. But 3 hours in seaboard and boat sinks. Spoilers. The boat sinks.
I know the boat sinks.
Well,
I was turned off. I was turned off from Avatar the moment I heard the element they're looking for is unobtainium.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we couldn't. Or they think the American public is so stupid that we need a name, which is also possible. I mean, I wasn't in the
You
right.
don't you don't need intelligence to come up with it. Didn't even need to be a good name. Like they could have named it like any series of syllables or sounds, and I would have been more impressed with unobtainium because that's just we didn't even make the attempt to try.
I know it's really lazy. It's really. It's like, and it's blue aliens, and he gets into the alien, has alien sex. I'm not, I'm not. I've heard. You know what I mean? It's like, I just can't do it. James Cameron, God bless. For the
Yeah,
ocean,
it's
I'm out. I'm out. So I know you guys might be hearing a train where I live, which is great. It adds a little color to my recording. Also, picture of my daughter in my head because she's amazing and she's awesome and she's the best. Shout out to Elizabeth. But the guy who plays the father in this thing was in a movie called The Real Rock and Roll about 12 years ago. Like I always watch it on mute when I'm doing my podcast. And he plays this gangster who is like, his father's a gangster, sort of like John Wick Part One. He's like the punk son, and his father
okay.
gets into a bunch of machination, and he becomes a hard man in England. You know what I mean? And Jason Statham's in it. Like Jason, it's a Guy Ritchie film. So like I think Jason Statham is like 4 of like the 7.
Guy Ritchie. Did he do Snatched and
Did Snatch, Lock, Stock. He did
Lockstock?
both Sherlock Holmes films with Robert Downey Jr. He did, he did one a couple years ago called Gentleman, which by the way, Gentleman is amazing.
I'll have to check that out. 'Cause I'm a huge fan of Lock, Stock, and Snatched.
Snatch, by the way, and I'm going to correct you because that's one of my favorites. Right. Anything Brad Pitt's in it, I'm almost always anyway. But like, did you see the most recent one? What was it? Bullet Train?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Netflix? Bullet Train? Worth watching.
Okay.
So, talking about the father, what did you not like about
What I not like about The Father or the movie or what?
the movie? That's it, the movie.
About um I I think the soundtrack was beautiful, but I think the soundtrack was overdone a little bit in my. It could have been a bit quieter and it could have been a little bit less obvious. I think the actors and the cinematography was enough to convey the emotions they were trying to sell. And they at times were like leaning in to the piano in a way that was just kind of, I wouldn't call it cowardly, but safe. I love it when movies are able to take a moment and just sit in the silence of that moment and you know, not using a piano to tell you this is a sad scene.
So it's such I didn't think we had been talking about this, but um, there is a podcast I listen to about wrestling. Right, I listen to a lot of varied podcasts. So there's a podcast I listen to about wrestling by a guy named Cornette. And long story short, so wrestling's a work. That's what they call it. It's predetermined, right? But it's about bringing emotions forth in your audience, right?
Yeah.
So if you watch a modern wrestling, it's a lot of move, 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 constant, right?
Yeah.
And nothing lands. Like if I throw you through a steel chair, right? Or I hit you with something, you're back up 10 seconds, right? You don't sell. You don't let the and selling is the art of pretending like someone really hurt
Yeah.
you. Okay? But the importance of the sell is to get the audience sympathy. But if you never do any of that, if you don't let the moments breathe, right? Then all you're just looking at is a car crash. Nothing really hits you emotionally. Yes, we know it's not, a real thing, and we know they're not hurting each other. But I can't lose my disbelief if you're just bashing me over the head constantly. You can't let things breathe. And we do that in a lot of modern, where we don't let moments just have its moments. We feel like we have to put a hat on a hat. Like you can have a great performance, soundtrack takes you out. You know what I mean? Rather than put you more in. And I think sometimes we fall into this trap where we think that the audience cannot handle real emotion.
Yeah.
And just get a grip of what they're actually seeing. So we're adding all this, or we'll in the same breath when something emotional happens. Marvel films are bad at this. When something emotional happens, we undercut it immediately with comedy. And comedy is great. And I'm a big believer that life is either comedy or drama. You know,
Yeah.
but sometimes you got to let people feel the feelings rather than undercut it immediately, because then you cut the stakes.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think, and I this isn't to say this was a bad scene. I love the scene, but I think the part where the soundtrack distracted me the most in this watch through is like that final climactic scene where like the mom is dying and it's like that final hug and that reunion. And it's just, I've had those moments where, you're saying goodbye to a loved one. And those like moments of just that quiet hug, no one saying anything, the sterile hospital room making almost no noise. I think the movie that scene could have been added to a lot with just even like 5 seconds of that silence.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with that those moments. Um, so one of the things I loved about this movie, but I thought that they did undercut a bit is that there's a sense of sort of loneliness that is really part where you are he is a lot in a way that really isn't realistic, but it shows where his emotions are. He can't come to grips with it, and nobody can help. But everybody is shot alone. The mothers, the framing of the shots. No one's really together. Everybody's alone on their own, you
Yeah.
know, and it makes it very difficult sometimes when you have something undercutting that. But visually, he is alone all the time, always shot by himself, and it gives you this sort of the fear that he has is palpable. You don't really need to overpower him to fight because you're right. Um, when someone's dying, even in that moment where he's hugging his mom and she reaches out for her mom, so Gordon Weaver takes a lot of a lot of attitude. When he reaches when Connor is hugging his mom and she reached out for her mom, even those moments are singularly shot because her mother Sigourney Weaver is dealing with her own
Yes.
right, and she's not dealing well with it, and the father is not dealing well with it. And Jen, the mother, is not dealing well with it. Connor, obviously, isn't dealing well with it. He's created this whole landscape to tell himself stories of how to deal with the issue. I take it because I saw pictures of Liam Neeson at the end. That's grandfather. You know, maybe he's hearing his grandfather. But all these things obviously don't really make sense in the natural world, but we do try to escape our dreams. And you can only face that alone. And it really does impart that. Now, I will say, I did not care for the bully rationale for beating him up. It seemed like more sexual tension than being angry with each other. They
Yeah.
just they would stare longingly at each other in a way that I said, okay, well maybe there's he's dealing with his sexuality and he's struggling with that. And he's like, no, you just want somebody to beat you up. It seemed very strange. The bully also seemed to spend a lot of time. So I didn't know if they were just 12-year-olds trying to struggle with whatever they're feeling. Um, I don't know because that's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah, I caught that too, but both the book not and the movie have this problem of like almost like every character in that story is so complicated and they're like masking their emotions and they're dealing with all these different feelings and trying to relate to each other in different ways. And there's that bully character that you spend like a lot of time with. Like I'd say the amount of time you spend with the bully is longer than you spend with the dad, and he
Yeah,
just is barely a character. He's a trope.
yeah, and I just don't understand why. Like there is no reason why this bully bullies him other than just wants to bully him. But it seems again they are very young. They're 12, so they're processing emotions. Um, but it doesn't seem to be just pure. And I went to school. You went to school. I mean, no, you got a homeschool. I went to school, so uh, I, I I was never bullied. But like the people who felt bullied, I don't think it was just a random thing. Like it just wasn't that. There was a reason, or they take a lunch money, or they were sad. It wasn't just, oh, you're staring at me. I want to punch you in the face. You know what I mean? That just seemed like a weird set. Also, I do say
Yeah,
by the second story, you already know the mom's right.
yeah,
By I don't know, third way of the film, you're like, oh, well, maybe it's a happy ending, and he's here to control the mom's better. By the second story, you're like, no, not the way this thing's like. That mom is dead.
yeah.
So we're just trying to figure out how to get him to realize mom's dying. And I don't know if that's particularly helpful in the storytelling. But then his own denouement, his own coming to realization that he just wants it over, I think redeems that in a bit. Because
Yeah.
in the end, it's like, oh, okay. So they didn't do the easy thing, being like, oh, I just want her to get better. Like they did a much more realistic thing where sometimes the pain is so much you just want it to end no matter how it is,
Yeah.
which is hard to deal with.
It
Consciously.
is. And in the way that scene is shot, and it actually that scene is one of the few moments of genuine silence in the movie, and they do it in a way I love, where he's having that dream where he's holding the mother above that like pit, and it is
Yeah.
such a loud, like vibrant, like terrifying scene up until the point where his mom's gone, and there's this horrible and also like nearly comforting at that point, like silence, like it's over, like that violent thrashing's done, and that's serves the emotion of that moment very well.
And I think, I mean, for a movie about a tree monster that comes and talks to a boy about his problem, you don't ever get bored. You know, you're sad with him, but the boy really invokes that. Although I will say, I didn't really have a touchstone with this kid. Uh, I was, I always like to say I'm not an angry person. I don't think I am. I'm sure people might disagree with that sometimes, but like I just didn't have this level of just inner turmoil. But I also didn't deal with my mom being sick. My dad got sick. My dad died when he was 16. Uh, but I don't know if I ever dealt with those. I didn't have 3 months of health. But and my grandmother also died like 6 months earlier. But I don't think I dealt with those emotions in this way. I'm not a destructive person. You know, also I don't like getting in trouble, so I would destroy my grandmother's whole living room. I never like getting in trouble, and that would be trouble. No matter how much I cut it, nobody ever said to me, "What would be the point of punishing?" That was not a thing in my life. It just
Oh no,
wasn't.
mine neither.
There's always a punishment.
Like I don't think I genuinely don't believe none of my caretakers ever even asked themselves that question. Like it just didn't get to that point. It was just like, okay, now he's being punished.
It's like, okay, here's the punishment. How bad do I want to make it this time? Rather than, there's no point in punishing. Oh, that wasn't happening in my
Oh
house.
yeah,
There was only
but not even just getting to that point of there's no point to punishing him, even asking themselves, what is the
no.
goal? They didn't get to what is the goal of this. It was just, all right,
Well,
you done up.
so I grew up 20 years before you did, obviously. So uh, in the 80s and the early 90s, people were a lot less worried about how you punch your kids. All right, you was like, spank the crap out of them. Who cares, right? And you know, I once got a spanking at school, like in the teacher's office. You know what I mean? In the principal's office. Like nobody went looked and said, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that." That just happened. All
Yeah,
right. And nobody called children and youth. Children and youth wouldn't have come. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it was. Now, obviously, things have changed. I would never spank on Elizabeth, let alone in a teacher's office. But and my mother, you know, my mother has a son who's 19 years younger than me, and he was raised completely different. You know, and he didn't deal with that. You know what I mean? Um, but I don't know that she ever thought that not punishing us was an option. You're going to learn a lesson, especially at
yeah.
school. I don't know what's going on in Britain, but you put a kid in the hospital in America, you're definitely going to expel. I don't know what
Oh
that
yeah.
means. Nor does a principal have an option. If that's what the rules are, that's what happens. They're gone. My grandmother never was like, oh, and walked away and cried quietly to herself. It just
Oh, I've had parental figures just cry and walk away and cry by themselves, but that wasn't a sparing me thing. That was they're too angry to even assess it yet, and then they came back and got punished.
My mother was never too angry to address them. She always addressed whatever anger she had immediately, and then maybe a couple hours later, when she cooled down and then got angry about it, and she would come back. And I'd go, let's go, because that's who that means. So, but I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really good with dealing with um, confrontation,
Yeah,
addressing things immediately. I'm not a big fan of letting things fester. Like if I have an issue, we'll address it, and it's helpful in my life because if I address something with you immediately, it doesn't become a big thing necessarily. But if there's a confrontation, sometimes confrontations are healthy, and it's okay that we disagree. All right,
yeah,
but like if I avoid all confrontation, one, I don't. That's not great in the real world. But also, if I don't address things, they become bigger things. They start to fester, start to hate people. People start to hate you. And if there's, I'm really good with social cues that helps me deal with something. You know. Um. So we have talked about a monster call.
yeah.
That's it. A half hour. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to read out what it was rated on Rotten Tomatoes. It was rated in 86%, and it was given a 7.4 on IMDb.
Oh, cool.
And it was
I
called
did.
Emotional and Spectacular on Why to Watch It.
Um, would you? I did find the author's note I was talking about earlier. If you'd like me to read that.
Give it to me.
All right. This is from the author, obviously, since it's the author's note. I never got to meet Siobhan Dowd. I only know her the way the most of you will, through her superb books. Four electric young novels, two published in her lifetime, two after her too early death. If you haven't read them, remedy that oversight immediately. This would have been her fifth book. She had the characters, a premise, and a beginning. What she didn't have, unfortunately, was time. When I was asked to consider if when I was asked if I would consider turning her work into a book, I hesitated. What I wouldn't do, what I couldn't do, was write a novel mimicking her voice. That would have been a disservice to her, to the reader, and most importantly, to the story. I don't think good writing can possibly work that way. But the thing about good ideas is they grow other ideas. Almost before I could help it, Siobhan's ideas were suggesting new ones to me, and I began to feel that itch that every writer longs for, the itch to start getting words down, the itch to tell a story. I felt and feel as I've been handed a baton, like a particularly fine writer has given me her story and said, go, run with it, make trouble. So that's what I tried to do. Along the way, I had only a single guideline to write a book I think Siobhan would have liked. No other criteria would really matter. And now it's time to hand the baton to you. Stories don't end with the writers, however many started the race. Here's what Siobhan and I came up with. So go, run with it, make trouble.
Like that very much. Now, the last thing I do is just recommend this film.
I would 100% recommend this film. I mean, I recommended it to you.
You did recommend it to me, and it meant something to you. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about the podcast. And why I make it not brand new movies. It's movies that touched us that nobody talks about anymore. I'd never even heard of this movie, but it touched you and it meant something to you, and it made my life richer because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I would recommend it. I think it's a great movie. You can sit down and feel heavy for me personally because I don't like a lot of heavy stuff. And it was a little heavy for me, but I think that if you're interested in the story um, as a child, especially for children out there who struggle with a lot of setbacks, really, really helpful understanding the world and the
Mhm.
theme of good representation of something scary, but it's not like life is. Life is also wondrous. And also, you really surprise you if you give it a chance. everything. So I really did like it. It did some allegories, and it's also family. There's nothing that happens in it that's super gory. There's nothing that happens in it that you watch with your, young adult child. Maybe not a small child, but
Yeah.
about it. No. Do you want to give anybody a shout out?
Give anybody a shout out? I already apparently shouted out Siobhan Dowd, the writer.
That is true. Siobhan Dad, who I've never heard of, but I will probably look up. I'll probably have you text me. And
Yeah,
that's it. Thank you for joining me, Lincoln. We'll have to do it again.
absolutely. You have a good one.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.